Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to this week's devotion. I come across this article that was in a study I was reading by Jim Warren, titled, Be a Student, Not a Victim. Many people are professional victims, always talking about how unfair life is. A victim will say, Why did this happen to me? While the student says, I don't care why it happened. I want to learn what God is trying to teach me. A victim looks at everyone else and cries out, Life isn't fair. While a student looks at life and says, What happened to me could have happened to anybody. A victim will feel so sorry for himself that he has no time for others, while a student focuses on helping others so that he has no time to feel sorry for himself. A victim will beg God to remove the problems of life so that he might be happy, while the student has learned through the problems of life that God alone is the source of all true happiness. I would say that it's definitely difficult being a student. You see, in James chapter 1 gives us the guidelines that will help us to be students and not victims when hard times come our way. James chapter 1 verse 2 says, Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds. See, first of all, James begins by reminding us that sooner or later we will all face trials, various sorts. Picture this. You're driving down the highway in a convertible car. The top is down, the music is blaring, and the driver is having a blast. Not a problem in the world, not a care or a concern. Suddenly, there's a huge bump, a jolt, and the car comes to a sudden halt. What happened? The car hit a massive pothole, and suddenly the happiness is over. Life is like that for all of us. No matter who we are or where we live, trouble is just a phone call away. I was reminded of a couple years ago as we were celebrating Christmas on Christmas Eve at Kendra's aunt's house. And we were having a grand old time, enjoying time with family, playing games, just having a ball. And mid-evening, there was a knock at the door from a local police officer. And the police officer was there to inform the family that Kendra's other aunt, who lived several states away in the state of New Jersey, the officer informed the family that that aunt had passed away in a tragic car accident that day. And I can tell you, the Christmas celebration at that moment had just totally ceased. Emotions were all over. We went from having a fun time and carrying on to crying, just in total shock. And we knew that, or that just goes to show me and us that things can just change in an instant. So that was just one example of many, and I'm sure many of you could share stories similar to that one, where just devastating news and our lives changed in an instant. You see, James says to consider moments like those joy. In fact, he says, count it all joy. Seems kind of crazy. In fact, it seems foolish to count moments like these heartbreaking circumstances, as joy. You see, the natural response is not to consider these moments as joy, but rather quite the opposite. You see, there isn't much joy found in any of the hardships that I've had, and I'm sure you could relate. You see, James isn't referring, though, to our natural reactions, but rather a supernatural reaction that is only possible through the supernatural power that is only given by the Holy Spirit. You see, when this occurs, we can see things from a totally different point of view, seeing things God's way. It will not cancel our trials, and it doesn't turn them into non-trials, but it does transform the way that we see our trials. You will view them differently because you believe that God can work through those trials. Maybe God could not accomplish this work with any other way without putting us through that trial. Our main problem with counting our trials joy is because we simply misunderstand the word joy. To many, joy means being happy, getting what we want, the absence of any and all pain. But see, that's not the biblical meaning of joy. The biblical meaning is a deep satisfaction that comes from knowing that God is in total control even when our circumstances seem to be totally out of control. The key to joy is knowing that God is in complete control. If you truly believe this, then you can experience true joy, even while you are weeping over the events that are happening all around you. You see, when trials come, and they will come to all of us eventually, there are some things that we cannot know and some things that we can know. We cannot always know why things happen the way that they do. No matter how hard we try to figure out, the things that happen in our lives, there will always be many unanswered questions in this life. The greater the tragedy, the greater number of questions we would have. And you know what? God does not explain himself to us in all cases. As we go through life, we can look back and see many blanks that we wish God would have filled in for us. But most of us will be carrying those blanks up into eternity. Here's though what we can know. We can know that when hard times do come, we can know that God is at work in our trials for our benefit and his glory. I recall a time when Dr. West was preaching here on a Sunday morning, and he used an analogy in regards to trials and tribulations as baking a cake. And in the analogy, if you were to take all the individual items of the cake, besides maybe the frosting, if you were to take all those individual items, if you've had, salt, or if you had baking soda, or even if you just had pure sugar, and you just took those ingredients individually and tried to eat them, swallow them, whatever, they would all be nasty. But yet, when you get done taking all of those ingredients, mixing them totally together, at the end, you have a masterpiece. You have a sweet tasting cake that tastes really good. You see, that's the same thing with the trials that happen in our lives. When you take this individual trial here and you take it in and of itself, it was painful, it hurt, didn't taste very good. But now you take this trial here and this trial here and the trial over there that you had, and now you mix all of those trials in your lives that you've went through and gone through. Now you have what God is desiring at the end, the masterpiece of you becoming more like him, more Christ-like. Who knew pain more than Christ? Who endured suffering, hardship, loneliness more than Christ? And so God is taking all of those things and he's working them together for our good. In fact, Romans 8:28 states, and we know that all things, that's all of those trials and tribulations, all of those individual ingredients in and of themselves, God is taking all things and working them together for the good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. You see, sometimes you may be able to see this, and other times you'll just simply have to take it by faith. So let's all work together at being better students, because we know that our trials are not meant to defeat us, but they're able to give us a greater spiritual victory. They're not intended to make us weak, but to simply make us stronger. They are not sent to hurt us, but to help us. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. God bless, and hope to see you all Sunday.